It's my pleasure to be here today to discuss the Clinical and Translational Pilot Grants Program of CaTS. And today I'm presenting on behalf of myself, Dr. Ochoa and Dr. Krauso-Wood, and together we lead this KCA for CaTS. I'd also like to thank right off the bat Megan Dunawar. She was very, very helpful in putting together these slides today, and I hope you enjoy the theme. So we'll start with a little bit of a pilot grants program overview, and then we'll move into some of the specific pilot grant opportunities available through CaTS. So the purpose of the pilot grants program is really to provide financial support for promising translational research grants. These are pilot and feasibility grants which will lead to additional funding in clinical and translational science in the state of Louisiana. So it's targeted at all of the CaTS member institutions. And beyond just providing the financial support for these pilot awards, the members of the KCA provide guidance for the awardees, and we meet with them on a regular basis to understand if they're facing any roadblocks, or if we can help them get through those roadblocks, or anything we can do to help make the process easier for them so that these pilot grants are successful and again will lead to further funding. So each awardee is assigned to one of the pilot grant leaders to facilitate the project and assist with issues. So, I'm responsible for the pilot projects through Pennington and the LSU main campus. Dr. Ochoa looks after the awardees at the LSU Health Science Centers. And Tonette Wood, she looks after those at Tulane. So, we all know the CaTS areas of interest from the main project, that being obesity, cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and HIV/AIDS. So these are all diseases with a high prevalence in Louisiana, and these are kind of the targeted areas that CaTS has identified in the main grant, in the main CaTS Project Center. So we align in the pilot projects with these same areas of interest. So we prioritize submissions that are in these areas here. So moving on now just to discuss a few of the funding opportunities that are available right now. Actually, it's very relevant that we're giving this presentation today. And so for our different projects, whether they be a pilot award, a visiting scholar, or a grant development award, the applicants must be faculty members of a CaTS member institution, holding a terminal degree, their PhD, MD, DDS, or something equivalent to that. We also extend this to senior postdoctoral fellows. And we've had several pilot awards to senior postdoctoral fellows, but they need to really be that. They have to be in their, like a third year of a postdoc, and they must have a commitment from the institution for that. That they're online for a faculty position. We need someone from the institution to sign saying that, they will provide resources for these senior postdocs and help them in the transition to faculty. So it's not really open to junior postdocs or to graduate students. There has to be a commitment from the institution to maintain these people as faculty. Also, it should be noted there's no citizenship requirements for these pilot funding opportunities, which isn't the case for some of the other NIH pilot awards, where you would have to be a citizen or a green card holder. We don't have that requirement for CaTS. So, as I just mentioned, we have three main opportunities which we've been focusing on. The first is the individual pilot grants. These are really targeted towards our junior faculty, as you will see. We have grant development awards, which are targeted to all faculty. And we also have visiting scholar grants, which all faculty may be eligible to apply, but it really is focused again at the junior folks and the early career scientists. That's the priority for the visiting scholars. Now, I think many people that are on this webinar are already familiar with the individual pilot awards, which we give each year. And again, the purpose of these is to develop preliminary data and background for a larger grant. So through these pilot awards, we're hoping that you will be able to generate pilot data so that you can submit an R01 or an equivalent type grant. Again, these are targeted to junior faculty, and these applicants must identify 2 senior mentors. This is something we added in recent years. We find that it's very helpful to have this mentoring relationship to help shepherd the project along, particularly given all the intricacies of clinical research. Having someone that's very versed in that has been very helpful and has increased the success in recent years of these projects. We offer up to $50,000 for 1 year in direct costs of that project. And the next RFA, or the request for applications for the 2020 awards, is going to be coming out very shortly. And I'll have more on that in a moment. But this table here gives you some of the pilot award statistics from the past rounds that we've funded. So through rounds 1 through 7, you see that we ask for a pre-application, and you see the number of folks that have applied at that stage. Then those pre-applications are reviewed by the Pilot Grants Committee, which is made up of all the co-directors of the KCA, and this list is forwarded to the Executive Committee of the CATS for final approval. And then, of course, we invite people who are successful at that point to submit a full application. And you see the numbers there. And from there, we move on to the awards funded each year. And you see we've funded from anywhere from 3 to 11 awards in a given year. It's important to note here as well that the NIH has provided us with money to fund 2 to 3 of these awards each year, as you can see here. But the institutions, the CATS institutions, have really stepped up with matching funds. So that final column, you'll see, lists the matching funds which have been given by the different institutions, which allows us to fund, more than just 2 or 3 awards each year. So you see in round 1, we funded 2 projects with NIH funds, yet overall we were able to fund 9 through all of the institutional matches. So of course, these matching funds must be spent at that institution. So if Tulane was going to fund, 2 additional projects beyond what NIH funded, those projects and that Tulane money would all stay at Tulane. The same with Pennington or the Health Science Center or what have you. So each of the institutions has the opportunity to fund some extra projects. Our group will provide, a list of the awards, or a list of the applications, that are ranked, and we also provide the scores from the reviewers. That way the institutions themselves can decide what they may want to or may not want to fund. Now you'll see, there's a good drop between the pre-application and the full application phase. And we really try to do this because it's very difficult to engage reviewers of these full applications. And on the other side, we don't want to put extra work on the applicants if we don't feel that their application won't be in the top group of those that are funded. So we're by doing this initial screening of the applications, we're trying to save work on both the applicant and on the reviewers, because we really ask a lot of the reviewers at CaTS for reviewing these pilot awards. And so with that, we'll just move on to our announcement. So the round 9 of the individual pilot awards is upcoming. The RFA has been approved by the executive committee, and it'll be released on November 4th. So just a few days from now, you can expect that RFA will come out through the CaTS listserv and the other venues that you'll see. We've really tried to, over the last couple of years, we've been really using standard due dates, and it's really helped people anticipate these RFAs and the full application dates. We try to make it so that they don't really overlap with the other NIH deadlines. You know, you'll see here April 17th for the full application. So we've tried to avoid, you know, the February and the June deadlines for R01s at NIH for that. And these grants that we're looking to fund in this round would all start for 2020. So this would be using money from the 2020 the CATS grant. So we review the grants ahead of this anticipated start date so that everybody can get a clean start on July 1st or close to that. So let me just move on briefly to talk about a couple of other opportunities, you know, before we open it up to questions. But in the last revision, or the renewal of the CATS Center, we really tried to think of a couple of novel approaches of ways that we can facilitate larger grant applications, and that we can facilitate the clinical science, clinical and translational science going on in CaTS. So we started these grant development awards, and we've been giving out 1 or 2 of these each year for the last couple of years. It's currently open. There's a rolling deadline through June 30th, so we still have a few months left if you have ideas here. And the whole purpose here is to help plan and prepare for a larger grant application. So these are not pilot awards. We've had people apply for this as sort of a mini pilot award, and they say they want to collect new pilot data or something like that. It's not for that though. It's to kind of finalize a grant application that you just can't get over the line. And we've had some excellent success with this so far. We support up to $5,000 for a year so that you can use this money to kind of get that grant over the line. So we expect that you already have preliminary data for your grant. You've got the pilot and feasibility data, but you just need to kind of polish this off. That you may want to host some collaborator meetings. You may want to send your grant out for expert review and pay reviewers to do that. You may need technical assistance with just finalizing the literature review and the background and these sorts of things. You may want to fly in a consultant on your grant to help, to meet with the team and to help polish it off. So it's really meant, as it's stated here, it's a grant development. We're trying to just put the final pieces together so that you can submit this. And again, we've had excellent results with this so far. So again, it's a rolling deadline. We usually offer about 2 awards per year. So if you're interested, it's time to start thinking about submitting this to us for review. The other award that's been around just for 2 or 3 years now are the visiting scholars. And this has worked very well also. The idea here is to bring new skills to the CaTS institutions. So if you're a new or an early career investigator and there's a lab out there somewhere, it could be in California or Michigan or Mississippi, and you want to go there to learn a new technique that we don't have in our institutions. That's what this is for. So we support up to $5,000 for travel and housing and research supply costs so that you can go to another lab and you can learn new techniques and you can bring them back to your institution. And so we also have good examples of this already where that has happened. We've had junior investigators from Pennington go visit another lab, bring back a technique, and now that technique is part of our core services at Pennington. And people are now writing R01 grants, which include these new techniques. So that's what it's for. And it benefits the early career investigator because they're learning the technique, but it also helps CaTS because we're bringing new techniques here. If you want to propose something that will only advance your own career, that won't be viewed as highly. So if you want to go somewhere and learn a technique that would help you out in your career, but it really doesn't bring anything to the institutions, we wouldn't view that quite as highly as if you're bringing something back that you can share and disseminate throughout CaTS. Also, if we have this expertise already in CaTS, then we would be more inclined to hook you up with that investigator and go learn that technique. So if it was something you wanted to go learn at Tulane, or you wanted to come to Pennington to learn some metabolism research, we already have that in CaTS, so we wouldn't send you to California to do that. We would try to get you to do that within the CaTS network. So again, it's an open deadline, a rolling deadline. We give 2 awards per year. And awards are still available. So if you're interested, now is the time to think about applying. So now I'll just give you a few tips here, a little bit of advice from what we've seen, which makes an application either successful or may raise some red flags for the reviewers. So the 2 big ones really are, you should really be responsive to the RFA. Read that RFA, look at what the program is looking for. If you want to do a pilot project on a very rare disease, which has very little relevance to Louisiana or the CaTS mission, that won't be viewed very highly. On the other hand, if you have an idea where you want to really address something huge for the population in Louisiana, and it's in the core mission of CaTS, that's really where you want to head. And again, we favor translational research on these topics. So really just look at each RFA could be a little subtly different in what they're looking for. 1 year, we actually emphasized shovel-ready projects. So this was coming to the end of the first cycle of CaTS, and we couldn't start projects really from scratch. We really wanted something that was shovel-ready and ready to go. So just make sure you look at the RFA carefully when they come out, in case there's little nuances like that in there. Second, the timeline. This has been it was a bigger problem earlier on, but we've really done a better job, I think, at identifying those projects which are feasible within 1 year. So just think about a clinical trial and everything that goes along with that. If you're going to propose a clinical trial, a randomized clinical trial with 200 patients in 3 different arms, and you were going to recruit from several sites in the state of Louisiana, that's not a pilot project. That's an R01, and it would be highly unfeasible that you'd do that in 1 year. So we're really looking for pilot and feasibility data. So we're looking for small projects that can be leveraged into larger R01s. And we find that many of the initial applicants try to propose something too big. They'll propose a trial with a 12-month intervention. Well, sure, that's 1 year of the intervention, But by the time you get your IRB and you've been recruiting patients and all that, it's really a 2 or a 3-year project. So really try to think about the feasibility of conducting your pilot project within 1 year. And also really lay out a timeline for the reviewers, and make sure that it's realistic. And that'll go a long way in getting your project to the next level. So I think in terms of general advice, really being responsive to the RFA and having a timeline that you can complete this project in 1 year, that goes a long way to getting through the initial screening and then on to the full application. And by the way, these are two things which knock a lot of the projects out of that initial pre-application screening. It can become very clear very quickly that the project won't be feasible for 1 year or that it was not responsive. So when you also submit, we prioritize projects which either have IRB approval or IACUC approval, or at least have started down that path. That you've at least talked to the IRB, they're aware of this, or that you've submitted the project at least, but you don't need to have approval at the time of submission. You will need to have approval at the time of where we release the funds. So again, this is just something that really reflects the readiness to start the research. And if we had 2 projects that were fairly equivalent in terms of the science, one of them had IRB approval and was ready to go, well, we'd lean more towards approving that project versus the other one. So again, it's not required, but it certainly helps your position in terms of identifying those projects. So the other thing is mentorship. This is becoming more and more important as we move along with these pilot projects. We now actually request a mentorship plan where you have a primary mentor from your home institution and then at least one other mentor that can be from another CaTS institution, or it could be from your home institution as well. And we ask that you include the bio sketch for both yourself and the mentors so that we can see that interaction and outline, how these mentors will help you succeed in your pilot project and beyond. So with that kind of brings the end of the formal presentation. We have here some links of the Pilot Grants program where you can find everything about what we funded so far. There's a little synopsis of each of the pilot projects we funded in each of the rounds. We have the RFAs available, standard due dates, and all that sort of stuff. And you see the email link there as well, that if you have further questions, you can email us at info@lacats.org, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. So that brings to the end the slideshow, and I believe that David has been looking if there's a chat box or something like that if people have questions to type in the chat box. But I'll turn it over to David to negotiate that.
Great. Yes, Dr. Katzmarzyk, thank you for the presentation. I do have some questions coming in. The first one is it necessary to have preliminary data for the pilot grant?
No, it's not. No, that's the purpose of the pilot grant is to generate pilot data. So the short answer is no. You don't need pilot or feasibility data before submitting.
Great. Okay. And I saw another question coming, but it's stopped now. Let's see if they're going to follow up. Okay. Are pilot feasibility studies only for junior investigators?
Yes. For this round, that's true. Now, every now and then we will issue a special RFA. We've done that at least twice in the past, or 3 times now, I think, where we've offered these multi-institutional pilot awards where it's open to all faculty. And again, we just had one last year where we did that. So we've engaged some of the more senior faculty in those types of pilot grants, but the usual pilot awards are for junior faculty.
Okay. Okay. This just in, is the multi-institution collaborative grant opportunity still available this year?
Oh, the multi-institutional?
Yes.
No, that was a special contest for last year.
Ah.
The ones that are available now in 2020 are the three that I outlined. The regular pilot grant application, which is $50,000 for junior investigators, along with their mentors. And we still have available the Grant Development Awards and the Visiting Scholar Awards.
Okay. Great. Okay. Can the two mentors be from the same institution, same department, or different departments?
Yes, that's completely fine. We ask, you'll see in the RFA that comes out shortly, we ask for 2 senior mentors, a primary and a secondary mentor. And we ask that you provide a brief description in the pilot grant as to the role of these mentors and the nature of the communication that they will provide. You know, whether you're going to meet with them weekly or monthly, or how that might go. So they can both be from the same institution, same department. However, we've allowed, like I said in that slide, you know, we've allowed for you to have a mentor at another CaTS institution if you would like. So we have opened it up, but there's no requirement for that.
Okay, great. Good question. Good question. I don't see any more questions coming. I don't see any being typed right now. Okay. Okay, so not seeing any more questions. Dr. Katzmarzyk, did you have any more comments for today? There's another one coming in. One more coming in. Let's see.
Okay.
Still typing. Okay. How many awards will be given this cycle? And what is the contribution from Tulane?
Okay. I believe we have the funds available to fund 3 pilot awards from the NIH funds. So let me tell you how this works. That's a good question. So all of the pilot applications come in. They are reviewed. Regardless of what institution they come from, they're all reviewed the same way. We try to identify 3 reviewers, and we do it in a way where we avoid conflicts of interest. So obviously, you know, the PIs and the collaborators on a grant would not review their own grants, and they would also, we limit it that, you know, individuals from those institutions don't review their own grants either. So what I mean by that is, if we have an application from Tulane, we try to find reviewers from you know, LSU and Pennington and Shreveport, Xavier and Auctioner, that sort of thing. That we don't usually allow people from the same institution to review grants from others from that institution. So anyway, bottom line is we get the reviews in from all of the grants, and then the grants are ranked from top to bottom based on those scores and the comments of the reviewers, regardless of the institution. So we do not rank them within the institution. And the top 3 grants with the highest scores are the 3 that would be funded by the NIH dollars. And so they could all go to one institution, or they could go to 3 institutions. It's based on the top 3 scores. Now, from that point, the institutions then would have the opportunity to fund additional ones from their own institution. And so, we provide that ranked list to the executive committee, which is made up by individuals from all the institutions. We give it to them, and then they can decide what they want to fund. So Tulane might see they want to fund projects 3 and 4, which were from Tulane, or LSU might want to fund a couple, and that typically is what happens. So the institutions themselves decide which ones they may want to fund in addition to the NIH ones. So the additional part of your question was how much money is Tulane putting into this year? We don't know that. That's a negotiation that happens, at the executive committee level, and Tulane would decide, once they see the grants, they would decide how many they want to fund.
Okay, great. A couple more came in. How do you define junior and senior PIs?
Okay, essentially the junior PIs are those that have not had an R01, so they've never had NIH funding. I'm just trying to look here, see if we say. And NIH, if you go to the NIH website, they define early career investigator as well. Looking here. Yeah, and so the senior mentors would probably be at the associate professor level or above, and they would in terms of the mentors, and they typically would have had NIH funding in the past or currently. So if you're a junior investigator and you've never had an R01, that's essentially what we're looking for.
Okay. Are staff members allowed to apply?
No.
No. Okay.
You would have to be either it'd have to be an academic appointment. So you could be an instructor, senior postdoctoral fellow, or you could be, faculty, assistant, associate, or full professor. And you must have at least a PhD, MD, or an equivalent degree. So if you had a master's degree, and you're not a faculty member, you could not apply for these, because again, the purpose of these grants are to provide pilot funding, which could be turned around very quickly into an R01 or an equivalent project. So if you're a staff member and if you're not a faculty member, you're not eligible to apply for an NIH grant. So it would be highly unlikely that we would try to fund someone who's not eligible to get an NIH grant.
Makes sense. Okay. Great. Well, I don't see any new questions that have come in, Dr. Katzmarzyk. So did you have any? And as soon as I say that, someone. Let's see. Here we go. Is there a sample proposal?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think what we would have to do, we would have to ask the CATS administrative core to see if they have any that they would be able to share. You may be, I know at the institutional level, you may have that. You may be able to talk to your the CATS pilot grants officer at your institution, and they may be able to request a proposal from one of the prior applicants with their permission and share it with you. But as far as I know, we don't have permission from any of the prior applicants to share their proposals. But let me ask the administrative core if that might be possible for this round.
Okay. And that gives me the opportunity to add, if Dr. Katzmarzyk is okay with it, we can make this recording available on YouTube later today, and if that's okay, and we get an answer, we can provide that answer in the posting, which we'll put on the LCATS list if you're okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Good deal. Good deal. Okay. Well, not seeing any more questions come across the chat. Were there any other comments you wanted to make today?
I think for me that's great. We just really highly encourage everyone to think about how they can submit one of these projects. We really like to see the applications come in and see all the research going on at the CaTS institutions. And well, just one comment perhaps, that we don't, in the translational research scheme, it goes right from, basic science to clinical to population. And much of what we receive is, the basic science to clinical or some advanced clinical work in the translational scheme. We don't get a lot of population research projects submitted. And people have commented in the past that, we don't tend to fund a lot in the population science and epidemiology area. And that's not for lack of trying. We can only fund what is submitted. So anyone working in the population science area, I would really encourage you to look at this as an opportunity to submit. I think we need to build that portfolio out. But other than that, just happy to take questions from people if they want to email me or anyone else at your own institution. We'll try to help best we can.
Great, and I'll just restate that the email address, if you think of a question later that you'd like to ask Dr. Katzmarzyk, it's info@lacats.org, info@lacats.org. So, great. Well, not seeing any other questions come across the chat room, we'll go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. Thank you, Dr. Katzmarzyk, and thanks for the great participation and questions. We'll have another webinar in November, and the presenter will be our health literacy core. So make sure you come back next month. That's on November 21st, and we'll advertise that on the listserv and Twitter as well. So thanks, everyone, and talk to you soon. Bye.